Hello again. Today I want to talk about getting started in cycling and sticking with it in the early days when it's easy to give up. I'll be touching on my own experience and hopefully giving some of you some inspiration and impetus. Who might this video be for? Well, possibly not just people who are considering taking up cycling for the first time. You might also be somebody who bought a bike years ago and it's gathering dust in the shed and maybe have the desire to give it a crack again. You might have recently taken up cycling and found it too difficult and you're considering giving up. Of course, you might be somebody like me, who's a few years into it, it's become part of your life, and you can watch this and recognise the growing pains of the early days and how much you've progressed. Step one, of course, is you've really got to want to do it. There are many reasons why people decide to take up exercise in general and cycling specifically, but whatever the reason, like wanting to lose weight for example, first and foremost, you've got to enjoy the activity, or your bike will very quickly become a dust catcher in your shed or garage like thousands of others. I won't go into the dozens of reasons why you might want to start, I've covered that in other videos. Getting fitter will either be a reason or a byproduct, and you could be making a choice possibly between cycling or running. I had back problems when I first started, so the impact of running meant it wasn't in my equation. If you're significantly overweight or out of shape, running is probably not the best option. I know someone who chose that option, ran a few hundred yards and was cooked. Plus he was feeling the impact in his ankles. The next week he tried the bike, completed around 5 miles. Yes, he was toast at the end of it, but his feet weren't killing him, and 5 miles was a significant distance compared to 300 yards, which he felt was a pointless exercise, pun intended. With cycling, I found that distance covered for the same effort is a huge motivation factor. That lovely cafe 10 miles away, where you had your well-deserved coffee and cake, well, you were never going to get there by running, were you? It's just too far. And while on the subject of cake, it becomes guilt-free. Because as those of you who watch my other videos will know, you need the energy provided by that cake to help you get back home. So it's not cake anymore, it's ECF. Essential cycling fuel. For me, it was simply that I'd recently retired through ill health. I'd never cycled my life before, and I was in danger of becoming a couch potato, so I decided I really did fancy celebrating my grandson's 40th birthday one day, and my current lifestyle just wasn't going to help make me achieve that. His dad, my eldest son, cycled anyway, so I decided to try and join him. The bonus of all this is that I get to cycle with my grandchildren too. I also had some minor mental health issues at the time, and over the years I've done some research, particularly in preparation for this video here, which I'll link at the end of this one, which basically astounded me as to how much cycling can alleviate mental health problems. Now, I'm stating the obvious here, but of course the next thing you need is a bike. Who knew? So like I said, there might be one lurking somewhere in the dark recesses of your home. And if not, and you're not 100% sure if you'll take to cycling, there's plenty of bikes not being used from when people gave it a try and gave up, particularly from the days of the pandemic. And it may well be you have friends or family who have one. You might be able to just borrow for a couple of rides without committing to buy one. But it is important that you do this just for a couple of rides. One of the biggest mistakes that beginners make is not realizing that the bike needs to fit you, or you might cause yourself medium to long-term discomfort if you do decide to take it up for a hobby. If you're convinced the bike you've used is the correct size, take it to a local bike shop for verification. And if you don't have a bike to access, please utilize your local bike shop to find out exactly what size bike you need. And there are various other factors which are very important, like saddle height. I won't go into more detail. There's plenty of videos out there about having a bike fit, but bear in mind the right fit is more important than you realize. And let whoever is advising you know what kind of terrain you'll be cycling on. Because again, you may find yourself in the situation I was in, when very soon after getting my first bike, I was having to fork out money again, getting the gear ratios changed. Because for the bike I bought, it was almost impossible to get up anything closely resembling a hill. As a beginner, it's easy to think a bike is a bike, and you can easily give up because you find it too difficult to ride up hills. But with the correct gears on your bike, you can make this massively easier and more enjoyable without being any fitter. Once you're ready to go, my next advice is don't overdo it too soon. There's a natural reaction in the human brain which says, if something's too hard, why the hell am I doing it? Because I'm not enjoying it. You'll have your head full of negativity, you'll feel miserable as well as knackered, and possibly give up completely. Any form of exercise needs a level of mental toughness to be able to bat away those thoughts during the activity. If you're starting from a low base of fitness, it will be difficult from the off. So you really should keep your progress in small increments. Don't be persuaded by a well-meaning cycling friend to go on a 20-mile bike ride during your first week. Personally, I made that kind of mistake, making jumps in the distance early on that were too big. Strava shows here the kind of ride I was doing at the start, less than 5 miles. Over a period of time, I stepped it up and would often do rides of 15 to 20. Then I got talked into a ride to a pub for a cooked breakfast one day. The ride was 46 miles, more than twice what I was doing. I kid you not, it took me the best part of a week to recover from it. This banner, although an advert for a cycle shop, could easily have been the title of our ride that day. So increase your distance gradually and do find some way of keeping a record of it with the likes of Strava, because it's a great motivating factor to be able to actually see statistically the progress you're making, and very crucial in the early days to help keep you going with your new cycling hobby until it eventually becomes just part of your life routine. You'll know it's become routine when you start taking your bike on holiday or hiring one when you get there, and you realize then the joy of exploring new places you would otherwise not get to see by car, bus or by walking. It's something I particularly enjoy, and there are plenty of videos on the channel showing some of the great places I've cycled in. Although cycling solo can sometimes be what you need, cycling with others is absolutely fantastic and great motivation. I've got videos on the channel about joining a club and the daunting prospect of cycling in a group, so consider subscribing by clicking on that little red icon bottom right there. Cycling with my son and with pals is also a complete joy, and most of those pals are people I've only met through cycling. It really does open up a new world, not just places, but people too. Riding organised events which offer a range of distances provide a challenge for cyclists at every level. And riding London to Brighton with my 2 sons is among my favourite proud moments. Doing those events for your favourite charity adds even more meaning and satisfaction to the cycling. If you're already a subscriber to my channel, you may well know I progressed eventually to multi-day events, culminating in Land's End to John O'Groats 2 years ago. So why am I referencing this in a video aimed at beginners? Well, there were 7 years between this and this. So remember what I said about building gradually. Ultimately, you get out of it what you want. You can get yourself to a level of fitness that gives you the kind of comfortable riding that makes you happy, and do that for the rest of your life. And that's why you're hopefully doing it, to make yourself happy. But if you're also inclined and are watching this from your sofa, feeling very unfit, well, that's where I was 7 years ago. And believe me, for you too, this is not an impossible dream if you're the kind of person who wants to push and challenge yourself. Many people who would otherwise consider taking up cycling are too weary and concerned about sharing the road with traffic. So, although my channel focuses on road cycling, the sport comes in many forms, and on occasions I've ventured off-road myself and thoroughly enjoyed myself. On gravel tracks, through vehicle-free farmland, and also along canal towpaths, which make for some great riding. I also know people who almost exclusively cycle indoors, something else I often do. It can be extremely sociable, and if this interests you, this video is on the channel and is a must watch if you fancy the Zwift social cycling experience. There are other software programs too, which allow you to cycle in many parts of the world without ever leaving your house. This is my garage setup, known by some people as their pain cave, but don't let that put you off. It's entirely their choice to inflict suffering on themselves. You really don't need to go that far. Oh look, a beautiful daffodil. Oh look, a discarded empty wine bottle, for God's sake. Once you've settled into cycling as a new pastime, there are always going to be challenges to your motivation. On only the second ride on my first ever road bike, I had a near miss with a careless car driver on a bend on a quiet lane, resulting in me falling on my handlebars and breaking a rib. This is why I said at the start, you really have to want it and enjoy it. Otherwise, for me, I would never have got back on the bike once I'd recovered from that. Click on this video here for some tips on battling low motivation, if ever that comes to you. Click on this for a deep dive into the benefits of mental health from cycling, and click on this yellow icon to subscribe if you would. Happy cycling, and I'll see you soon.